Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Check 1 2, check 1 2. How's everyone doing? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Stadium Pulse. My name is Tegan Randolph, your host for all things college football. It is a beautiful January 30th, 2026. We are closing the chapter on the month of January, and it's crazy to think we are just 1 month into 2026, which means we're 1 month closer to the start of the college football season. Leave a like, leave a sub. I have to say it, frankly, for the fact that if I don't, there is a decline in the analytics, and that's part of the job. That's part of what I signed up for. Let's get this out of the way. If I sound nasally, if I sound a little bit beat up, to call a spade, guys, I'm sick. I'm a little sick. I'm sick of a lot of things in college football, but actually for my physical well-being, this is the definition of the Jordan flu game. This is the definition of a guy pushing through. Honestly, I was questionable on the injury report, damn near doubtful for today's show. But we persevere, we push forward, we continue to fight. So it's going to be a little bit more chill. I got to call a spade a spade. There's not going to be as much antics in terms of emotion and volatility in today's show, mainly for the fact that I will pass out if I get a little too crazy. And I will say, reserve your judgment for me drinking a Red Bull. I need it to get through today's show. I have to use this. Pardon me. Nonetheless, we have three main topics per usual on the Stadium Pulse. If it is your first time, we try to keep these around 30 to 40 minutes. Very digestible shows. We're not trying to go on for 2-3 hours at a time. We're going to be talking about who could be the next Indiana. And we're going to change the term a little bit. We're also going to talk about Clemson. What is Clemson's outlook moving forward? Maybe a little bit of what they like to call a temperature check. And then for fun, I've been playing a ton of college football 26. I played a ton of college football 25. And I want to talk about college football 27. This is a college football page, so we got to talk about the college football video game. Who wants to start? Let's go ahead and dive in. What team has the best chance to become the next Indiana? Now, the question in of itself, in my opinion, is unfair, and it's unlikely that we will ever see another Indiana-like turnaround in college football ever again. Frankly, for the fact that we have so much history in the sport that we are just now seeing something for the very first time, to expect to happen in a back-to-back instances within a 5-year time span is unrealistic. I would actually change the question to better articulate some of the answers on who could be the next Vanderbilt. Because very much like Indiana, Vanderbilt was the bottom feeder of their respective conference. They were the lovable losers. If they were to win, I don't know, 4 or 5 games within a season, that was seen as a success in some metrics. And though Indiana has scaled to a point where they were able to go 16-0, something that we hadn't seen post 1900, and win a national championship, the expectation and the bar is a little bit too high to say who could be the next Indiana. Whereas with Vanderbilt, they had the incredible season in 2024, beating a team like Alabama, going on an incredible run, and then followed it up with Diego Pavia and had a very solid 2025 season where they were potentially going to make the college football playoff. You had the runner-up in the Heisman, and that is a little bit more of a digestible expectation to look around at the landscape of the sport and say, who could be that team? Who could be a bottom feeder who rises up from the ashes? Because I think it is very interesting to note when talking about Vanderbilt specifically, same could be applied to Indiana, of course, when we're looking at the resource and the investment. Once a little bit of winning followed the football program, we saw Vanderbilt be able to get a 5-star from Georgia. Well, not technically from Georgia. He was from Nashville, but stole a 5-star from Georgia and Kirby Smart. They were able to retain Clark Lee, originally seen as a program that could get poached for a larger program. Vanderbilt's actually a team that's a threat in the NIL space. Vanderbilt's a team that isn't going to get pushed around. They are acting like an SEC school, as they should, because they're in the SEC. Same can be said for Indiana. Mark Cuban, the largest alumni base in the entire country, what was originally seen as a school that will only invest into basketball. At the end of the day, football is the heavy hitter. Football is the main event. And if football is getting a lot of traction and football is getting a little taste of success, that instantly becomes a revenue-generating sport, and it's always going to be king. And so as soon as a little success gets there, the money will follow. So I have three teams that I think could be the next Vanderbilt, or if you still want to go with the next Indiana. The first team that came to mind as we continued into the offseason based on some of the moves, I look at this and I look through the criteria of, were you a bottom feeder? Do people not take you serious? Because not a lot of people took Indiana serious. Not a lot of people took Vanderbilt serious. Are you a bottom feeder that no one is expecting to rise up? Do you have an alumni base or a resource pool that might be a little bit underrated that could be untapped potential? And I think Kentucky fits that perfectly. I think Kentucky football did a huge service to themselves, but also to the fan base by getting rid of Mark Stoops, who could go 7-6 every single season, get paid $10 million, and really not bat an eye about what his job security looked like. That was the notion around Kentucky, that you'll have a couple of close games against the Georgias, the Texases of the world, but you could never really finish the job or pack it into a double-digit win season and look at Kentucky as an actual threat in the SEC. They were always playing the spoiler role without any real substance to what they could be. Out Mark Stoops, insert Will Stein. Now, Will Stein, I've done videos on my own channel about. I have always stated time and time again how much I believe that Will Stein will be an elite level head coach. I believe in the offense. I believe it could work for any quarterback that walks into that building. The fact that he got to pull away Kenny Minchie from Nebraska to Kentucky to Lexington, I think is fantastic. And that goes to the overall picture with their transfer portal class, where I really believe that Kentucky could be in for a very fast start with Will Stein. This is a program that a lot of people will pair with the fact that they are a basketball school. That Kentucky can only be a basketball school. Same was said for Indiana. And then for Vanderbilt, they were a baseball school, and they were what kept the GPA up for the SEC conference. I don't know if that may be the case with Kentucky if they have the young up-and-coming star with Will Stein with the roots to Kentucky, who understands Lexington to its fullest capability and wants to make Kroger Field an actual threat in the SEC. Now, this may seem crazy to a lot of people because these are bottom feeders that we're talking about, but that's what we're talking about when looking and asking the question, who could be the next Vanderbilt? Who could be the next Indiana? The next team to highlight is a team that has actually made a college football playoff run. Now, I would say if there was trivia and you had to list off every single college football playoff attendee, wins or losses, doesn't matter, a lot of people would forget Michigan State made a college football playoff run, and it wasn't with Kenneth Walker. This team made an actual run, and for the most part, has since then completely fallen off the face of the earth. We understand they had the miraculous run with K9, as previously mentioned. And from that point forward, they had little moments, but it completely fell off the cliff, especially with Jonathan Smith, the Oregon State head coach that had made the move to Michigan State. Didn't work out. Insert Pat Fitzgerald. Now, maybe this is a guy that can insert some identity, because that's something that you really never felt with Michigan State over the last era, was a true identity to what their football brand is, which is hard-nosed defense, one of the best secondaries in all of college football, and they can run the damn football with a solid enough quarterback play. Maybe we shift back to the core of what Michigan State was, and once again, we're looking at a resource pool that I think could be very much underrated if he could start to figure out, and I'm more speaking directly at Pat Fitzgerald, some of the nuances with some of the funding and the donors. If you really read the tea leaves with Michigan State, that's been a problem, but winning fixes everything in college football, and money will follow winning at the end of the day. Another team, and the most obvious team to me, because they wouldn't really be classified as a bottom tier program. I wouldn't classify them with Rutgers. I wouldn't classify them with like Purdue. But a team that was once a powerhouse within the sport of college football, national championship runs in the 2000s, went the entire 2010s damn near with double-digit wins. Virginia Tech is easily the team to pinpoint and say, yeah, they're going to be a team that's going to make a college football playoff run within the next 3 seasons. Now, how fast they get to that point, could it be in year 1? Could it be in year 2? Maybe it has to wait until year 3. That's to be determined, but you have James Franklin inserted in, and you know what he's damn good at? For all the things that we gave flack to James Franklin during his time at Penn State, he is a program builder. The front half of his tenure and the era that he can provide at Virginia Tech is going to be incredible. The questions then become, when we get a little bit down the road, what is the ceiling of those programs? But you don't have to worry about that. That's not what you're worried about at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech needs some substance. They need something to chew on to. And you throw in the fact that they have invested into not only their football program, but the overall athletic department got an injection of $250 million. Partially why you got James Franklin to buy into Virginia Tech was because of that investment. You were able to bring in an incredible recruiting class, an incredible transfer portal class. Was it mainly just Penn State guys coming over to Virginia Tech? You're damn right. You're supposed to do that in 2026 as a head coach. And James Franklin is going to instill a culture. He's going to instill a standard at Virginia Tech that they hadn't previously had. And that's what makes me so excited about what this program could be, because I truly believe you throw in the resource investment, a stability at the head coaching position, and then to sprinkle it all on top, you're in the ACC, where a program went 8-5 and won the conference. I mean, what are we doing here? If that's the standard for your conference, Virginia Tech could find themselves very high in the standings, and all of a sudden they're playing for an ACC opportunity just like that. So I really believe that these 3 programs may not be on the radar right now. They may not even be on the radar in 2026. But could we see some of the most incredible turnarounds in college football, and maybe see another story like Vanderbilt, like a team like Indiana, maybe not to a 16-0 national championship head start, but a team that has turned it around because of the accessibility of the portal in the NIL space? I really do believe it could be one of these 3 teams. Told myself I wasn't going to get amped up, and here I am just getting fired up. That's what the sport does to you, man. Also, sidebar, what do we think of the beard? Beard not too bad? And nonetheless, I don't need the opinion. I don't want to talk about this, because I love this team. And this is a coach that I've been highly critical of. And yet, I still have a soft spot for Dabo Swinney. Where does Clemson go from here? Truthfully, that's the question. When you go and close the chapter in 2025, you reflect and you think and you say, man, we entered 2025 with national championship aspirations. And there was an asterisk there, not for the fact of whether or not they could contend for national championship contention. I don't know why I had to repeat myself there. It wasn't about whether or not they could compete for it. It was, is this going to be the only window that we have? Because you were number one in returning production. You brought back your quarterback, Cade Klubnik, former five-star, a guy that seemed like he was finally putting it all together in what could have been an incredible 2025 season. You have an incredible amount of wide receiver talent. The offensive line was something that people really didn't talk about in detail, but kind of assumed, yeah, there's some guys that are going to pop up on the PFF mock draft simulator, and you're going to say, yeah, they have a good offensive line. But the defense is where I really sunk my teeth into and said, yeah, this team's going to be very, very difficult to beat. You have Peter Woods, former five-star defensive tackle, going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Same could be said for TJ Parker. Then you had Sammy Brown at linebacker, Avion Terrell, all these different pieces on a defense that not only was very talented, but you had cohesion. You had a high amount of snaps played, a lot of veteran talent. You can have NFL talent on your roster, but are they NFL ready? And I felt like this roster as a whole was NFL ready. So many guys were going to get drafted to go and play on Sundays. And that's going to be the same case in 2026, even with the results that had happened. And what clearly went wrong was the miscalculation or evaluation of the current talent that's on the roster. One of the, I would argue the best defender on that team ended up being, funny enough, a transfer. And if you know the history and the frustration from Dabo Swinney from using the transfer portal, you could see the irony on a guy like Will Helt from Purdue being the most impactful transfer on this entire team. I think you can point to Cade Klubnik as a guy that really struggled with the pairing of Garrett Riley. They obviously let him go after this season. It was just an oil and water situation. You saw a lot of times the best moments from Cade were out of structure, not really within the confines of what Garrett Riley wanted to run. You throw in the fact that the running back position was never figured out. The offensive line was clearly overrated. And then with the change of the defensive coordinator, the defense never really gelled together. And it was a miscalculation or misevaluation across the board. We don't need to revisit every little bit of what went wrong with Clemson. But we see the 7-6. You don't have a quarterback. You have all the pieces that we talked about that are going to be playing for the NFL gone. You are now in your third straight season with 4+ losses. And I understand what people will say. They will say, you know, 2024, they won the ACC. They got to the college football playoff. You know, I don't know if that is as impressive as the cover letter looks. The content of the book is not as impressive as what the title says. You know, this is now back-to-back years where we're seeing 4+ loss teams winning the ACC. I mean, hell, Duke at 8-5 was able to win the ACC. So how impressive is that feat truly, even though winning a conference championship, if someone was to tell you, yeah, this team won a conference championship, that's impressive. Is it at this point? Especially for that conference at this point? It's to be seen. But you go into next year, and to reiterate the point I said before, the window. The way that Clemson has been constructed and Dabo has tried to build up this team by not leaning into the portal. And yes, you'll see people reiterate or like rebuttal this and say, yeah, he uses the portal. You just mentioned Will Help Portal Edition. He uses it. Yeah, just because you dip your toes into the water doesn't mean you could go and tell me you swam. And the truth is, Clemson still dips their toes into the water, but really doesn't use it to put the roster over the top or to avoid the deficiencies across the board, because they still rely on development. And when your development is flawed, your process is flawed, your results are not going to be what the standard is at Clemson. And frankly, I don't know what the standard is at Clemson anymore. It's not national championships. We're so far away from them winning national championships. The landscape of the sport has changed so much where you cannot tell me any of the processes that Dabo Swinney had when he was at eye level with Nick Saban that they are going to be able to get back to the mountaintop. So is the standard just being a first round out in the college football playoff, hoping you could get to 9 wins? I think that could be a fair argument. I think you could make a fair discussion point on just saying maybe that's what Clemson is now. That Clemson is not a team that we could just sit here and try to have these conversations of, I don't know, they could be in national championship contention. Maybe they have to earn that respect once again. Now, I understand Dabo Swinney doesn't need the respect of me, you, or anybody else, and he will tell you that. I'm not coming from the perspective to attack the man, especially knowing how he has had to dealt with the portal over the past couple of weeks, getting just ripped to shreds. You know, he went in kicking and screaming, trying to not use the portal. And the moment that he does and tries to elevate his roster to bring in the right people into the building, oh yeah, we're just going to have Pete Golding tamper blatantly and more than likely have no repercussions for his actions, which he'll tell you. I've talked about this before on my TikTok, and I think it's right now something that if you end up watching this video, I want to hear from like true Clemson fans, because I can't imagine what your feeling or expectation is going into next year. Is it 8-4, 7-5? Are you almost looking at this without the tiger claw and the history that goes into Clemson and just taking that out? Like it's so weird because it's almost like if Nick Saban completely fell off the cliff. It's so different with Alabama because you try to hold him up to these crazy standards, but Nick Saban's not in the building. It's different for Clemson. The guy that got you to the mountaintop is still right there. He's still leading the charge. He's still running down that hill. He's still doing all the same things that he did before. But then you can't really look at him and say, can we make a change? Can we switch things up? And I'm left with more questions than I do answers when talking about Clemson. And I don't know where to go. And frankly, I don't know what the direction or the identity of this team is anymore outside of Dabo Swinney continuously showing himself as a guy that is more than likely going to retire because of the landscape of where college football is. And that's heartbreaking. "22 minutes left, or not left on the show. We've gone for 22 minutes. Let's talk about an easier subject, or not as like, I guess angry. We've talked passionately about what team could be the next Indiana, you know, what's going on with Clemson. I say I'm not going to be passionate about this, but I always end up being. College Football 27, I feel, is a make or break version of this video game. Now, I understand a lot of the viewers that watch this show do play video games, and I am very much one of you guys. A lot of college football media pundits will probably get paid off by EA, and they'll have a big discussion point about, oh, well, all those people that play video games, you know, they're coming out with another college football game, and Arch Manning's the cover athlete, and then they never talk about it again. I played NCAA 14 for a very long time. I played College Football 25 for so many hours that I don't feel comfortable telling you on this show because it would show how much free time I really have. Same could be said for College Football 26. College Football 26 did not warrant its price tag. Now, most of these games, because a lot of people say the same three things. They say it's just a roster update. It's just a copy and paste. There's nothing new with these games. And in a lot of those cases, those people do have a point. They're just not really communicating it, I think, in an accurate way, because it's not just a roster update. If you actually play the game, you understand the nuances and the changes. I'm not trying to just cape for EA here. I'm just being realistic, because the truth is College Football 25 and the College Football 26, the difference between those two games were quality of life updates. And if you play the game a ton, you notice them, you pick up on them, and you appreciate them. Am I going to pay $70 for quality of life updates? You're out of your goddamn mind. You're out of your goddamn mind. Now, nonetheless, I think there's additional context to be had when talking about this is truthfully, the Madden deals or the Madden rights deal was up this past year. And as a business, I'm looking at my business degree right now. It makes a ton of sense to prioritize college football or to prioritize Madden over college football, especially knowing the hype of college football 25. You are not going to get close to that same level of hype probably ever in this game's lifespan. So you might as well make sure that you can have your exclusive Madden rights, and we'll deal with college football 27 when it gets here. We're here. It's here. We have to fix this game because the potential with this game is so damn high. Truthfully, you have one of the most passionate fan bases. I would argue college football fans are the most passionate fan bases in all of North America, potentially the world. Just soccer is one big ass sport. So I got to respect that at the end of the day. And the fact that there's so little detail applied to a college football game where the fan bases that are playing it would appreciate it more than most. I get it. You focused on having the right noises and the entrances and all these different things. And I'm not just trying to have an event session about college football 27. I'm here to provide solutions that I think from a fan's perspective and someone that has played this game a ton, that I could give some good suggestions. That frankly, I understand. I'm not naive to the game development space. I wanted to be a game developer for a large chunk of my life. And I understand the hard work, not to the fullest capability of someone that actually does it. But I think these ideas in actual practice, if you have the investment to do it, wouldn't be that difficult. I think in Dynasty, there should be a college game day cutscene. There's got to be some sort of feel that is added like we see with so many other college football games in the past, and maybe even some of the current Madden games, to add to the big game feel. These are the details that I'm talking about, where I can enter a game against number 2 Alabama and I'm number 1 LSU. And yeah, it's a night game. I get the cool little drones. I get the fun entrance, but it really doesn't feel like as big of a game as we see in college football time and time again. I think recruiting needs a complete revamp because by year 3 of just getting a bunch of 91 speed wide receivers, which by the way, the recruits are very boring compared to 2025, where you could get a 97 speed wide receiver that was 6'5". That was fun. Make the sport fun. Sports video games in general should be arcade-like. They should be fun. They don't have to be realistic. If I want them to be realistic, I'll just put on football. I'll put on a game. But not to just focus on Dynasty. I know a weird portion amount of people play Cut. Cut's basically lifeless. They don't put any content in for Cut. Everyone that actually plays the game will tell you that. I don't play that because I don't give them the money that they've already gotten from me time and time again. But Cut's basically worthless. The fact that we can't pick our playbooks in online head-to-head is egregious in its own right. The fact that there's not more detail in the sport that would appreciate it the most, and don't even get me started on the gameplay. I could find myself really, if this version isn't good, that I'm just like, I'm done. I'm done paying. I'm already at that point with 2K. I don't pay for NBA 2K. I don't pay for Madden. I'll play Madden at my friend's house. I'm 13 again, but I do not pay for those games because I know they're not good. In college football, they hyped it up with the devs, and maybe I'm just sipping the Kool-Aid and I'm dumb for doing that. That's completely fine. I get that. But college football 27 just has to be better. It has to be better. Nonetheless, I'm surprised I got through 30 minutes of a show, guys. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm flued out. I think I got the cold. It'll probably last a couple days. And it's annoying because it is so damn cold here in Nashville. I appreciate anyone who's watched the show, either present or future people that watch this show and see this Rivalry hat with the Baylor sweatshirt and all the pennants behind me. I appreciate you. Regardless if you don't leave a like, sub, anything across the board, it means the world that you gave the show a chance. We've seen so much growth over the past couple weeks. I want to keep that momentum going. That's why I did the show today. Nonetheless, I gotta go lay down. I gotta go lay down. I'm exhausted. I will see you guys on Tuesday. No, I'll see you on Sunday. If I'm still feeling good or if I'm feeling better. Nonetheless, I'll see y'all Sunday, guaranteed for Tuesday. Peace.